A cold morning and a quiet hero. The streets were empty under a soft, ashy blanket of snow, and the early morning air felt dense, muffling the usual sounds of city life. This stillness was a rare kind of peace in Cedar Valley. But as the dark sky lifted slowly, faint sounds of morning life emerged. Cars starting in the distance, a baker unlocking his door, the scrape of shovels clearing sidewalks. In the ER at Mercy Medical Center, the morning shift was just starting, but for Elena Marquez, the head nurse, the day had already been long. Barely 2 hours into her shift, she had already attended to a steady stream of minor cases, most of which seemed to stem from the cold weather. Sprained wrists, a child with frostbitten fingers, and a few elderly residents who had fallen on the ice. But nothing that morning would prepare her for the sight of a little girl, no older than 10, standing just inside the hospital's sliding doors, clutching something close to her chest. Elena noticed her immediately, not because the girl looked out of place, but because of her quiet resolve, the steady determination in her eyes as she moved forward. Under an oversized coat and a worn-out scarf, she looked small but purposeful. Her hair, tangled and damp, was stuffed under a knitted hat that had seen better days. But her face, round and flushed, held a look that made Elena's heart ache. Elena's instinct, honed by years in the ER, told her something was wrong. The girl moved closer, and it was then that Elena noticed the bundle in her arms, wrapped in a faded blanket with frayed edges. A soft whimper came from the bundle, a sound so faint it was almost missed in the hum of the ER. The receptionist at the front desk, Joanne, who had been working in the ER since before Elena joined, was the first to speak. "Hey there, sweetheart." Joan's voice softened, adjusting her glasses as she leaned closer. "Are you lost? Do you need help?" The girl shook her head, her lips chapped and slightly trembling, but her grip on the bundle didn't loosen. With a glance toward Elena, Joanne softened her approach. "What's your name, sweetie?" "My name is Ava," the girl replied quietly, her voice steady despite the exhaustion shadowing her eyes. She looked up, her gaze flicking between Joanne and Elena, a flash of fear evident in her eyes. "Please, the baby is sick. He needs help." Elena's chest tightened. She knelt down to Ava's level, meeting her eye. "Can I see him, Ava?" Ava hesitated before nodding, her tiny arms relaxing just enough for Elena to take a gentle peek at the bundle. Pulling the blanket back slightly, Elena's gaze fell on a tiny face, flushed with fever, a soft whimper escaping his chapped lips. The baby looked far younger than she had anticipated. His breaths were shallow, and his tiny fist was wrapped around Ava's finger, as if he had clung to her through every step of her journey here. Elena's mind raced, each observation reinforcing a picture that didn't add up. A young girl, barely out of elementary school, alone with a feverish baby in the early morning hours. She shared a quick, knowing look with Joanne, who immediately picked up the phone to call the pediatric unit. "Come with me, Ava. We'll make sure he gets the help he needs." Elena motioned to an empty chair in a quieter corner of the waiting room. "You're doing so well, Ava, but I need to ask a few questions to help us make sure he gets the right care." Ava followed her silently, her hands clutching the baby close to her chest as if he was her lifeline. Once seated, she looked up at Elena, her eyes pleading. "Will he be okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elena nodded, her voice soothing. "Yes, Ava, he'll be all right. Can you tell me the baby's name?" Ava hesitated, her gaze dropping to the tiny face nestled in her arms. "His name is Liam." "Okay, thank you, Ava," Elena replied, a warmth in her voice. "And where are your parents, honey? Do they know you're here?" Ava's shoulders slumped slightly. She looked down, and a flicker of sadness washed over her face. "No, they don't know I'm here," she whispered. They wouldn't understand." Elena's concern deepened. Something about the way Ava said those words left a chill in the air. It was more than just secrecy. It was a resigned acceptance, as if this young girl had been carrying the weight of responsibility far too heavy for her small shoulders. "Ava, how old is Liam?" Elena asked gently. 6 weeks, Ava said, her voice cracking slightly. "I've been taking care of him since. Joan had come over and placed a hand on Elena's shoulder, handing her a clipboard with the intake form for the baby. Elena took it but continued speaking softly to Ava. "Since when, Ava?" Ava bit her lip, her hands trembling as she cradled Liam closer. "Since I found him. He was alone, in a box behind my building. I couldn't leave him there." Elena's heart stopped. She exchanged a stunned look with Joan, who had gone pale. Elena reached out, placing a gentle hand on Ava's shoulder. "Ava," she began, her voice barely containing the shock and awe she felt. "You found him. Alone. In a box." Ava nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. "I go outside to take the trash when my parents are busy. It was late, and I heard him crying. He looked so cold and helpless. I tried my best to keep him warm and safe, but now he's sick, and I don't know what to do." Elena swallowed the lump in her throat, feeling the gravity of what Ava had just revealed. The courage it must have taken for a 10-year-old to decide to care for an abandoned infant, to keep him safe in secret, to try her best to be his caregiver. It was nothing short of incredible. She pulled Ava into a gentle embrace, her voice breaking. "You did something truly brave, Ava. You saved his life. We'll make sure he's taken care of now. You're not alone anymore." As the pediatric team arrived to examine Liam, Elena guided Ava through the hospital doors, away from prying eyes. The girl walked beside her, the tension in her small shoulders finally easing. She held Elena's hand tightly, as if anchoring herself to this newfound lifeline. They were just beginning the journey, and as they walked down that sterile, fluorescent-lit corridor, Elena knew they had stepped into a story that would forever change them both. Secrets and revelations. Ava's tiny fingers, chapped and red from the cold, clutched tightly onto the edge of her oversized coat as she sat in the corner of the pediatric waiting room, her eyes flicking from Liam, now under the care of a team of nurses, back to Elena. She looked small and exhausted, but her gaze remained focused, as if willing herself not to blink. Elena had just briefed Dr. Raj Patel, one of the pediatricians on duty, about Ava's story. The shock on his face mirrored her own feelings, but he composed himself quickly, giving her a nod. "Let's get the baby stabilized and keep him under observation. It sounds like he may have a respiratory infection, possibly pneumonia," Dr. Patel said, concern evident in his voice. "He's lucky he got here when he did." "Lucky for him, indeed," Elena murmured, casting a glance back at Ava. She took a deep breath, calming the swirl of emotions that had welled up since the little girl walked through those doors. What Ava had done was beyond brave, it was remarkable. She returned to Ava, who sat perched on the edge of the chair, her legs swinging nervously. The little girl looked up at Elena, her eyes searching for some kind of assurance. Is he going to be okay?" Ava's voice was barely a whisper. Elena knelt down beside her, reaching out to hold her small hand. "Yes, Ava, he's in good hands now. Dr. Patel is one of the best pediatricians we have, and he's going to make sure Liam gets everything he needs to get better. You did exactly the right thing by bringing him here." Ava nodded, her shoulders slumping in relief, but Elena knew there was more to understand. She guided Ava to a quieter room down the hall, away from the bustling activity of the ER and the sounds of Liam's treatment, hoping that in this more private space, she could coax Ava into sharing more of her story. The room was warm and softly lit, a small comfort amidst the stark, sterile surroundings. Elena pulled a chair close to Ava and sat, leaning in to speak softly, gently. "Ava, you've been so brave, and I want to help you both as much as I can. Can you tell me a bit more? Like how long you've been caring for Liam?" Ava looked down at her hands, the sleeves of her oversized coat brushing her knuckles. She fidgeted, her fingers nervously twisting a loose button, before lifting her gaze to meet Alina's. Her eyes were big and brown, and in them, Alina could see both fear and a remarkable maturity that seemed far beyond her years. "It's been maybe 3 weeks," Ava began, her voice steady but soft. "I found him on my way back from the grocery store. It was late, and I had to go because—" She trailed off, shifting in her seat. "Mom sometimes forgets to get things we need." Alina listened intently, nodding in encouragement. "It was so cold that night," Ava continued. "I heard him crying, and there he was, just left in a box behind the building, wrapped in a thin blanket. I didn't know what to do at first, but I couldn't leave him there, Miss Alina. I just couldn't. He was so little and so quiet, like he was too cold to even cry very loud." Ava's voice broke slightly, and Alina reached out, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "So you took him home?" Alina prompted gently. Ava nodded. "I used to have a doll, Miss Alina, one that cried like a real baby. I remembered the way Mom used to take care of me when I was little, and I tried to do what she did. I fed him, changed his blanket when it got dirty, and tried to keep him warm. I even saved up money from doing little things around the neighborhood so I could buy him formula. I tried my best, but I think maybe I didn't do enough. I should have brought him here sooner." Her voice was filled with guilt, and Alina's heart ached. "Ava, you've done more than anyone could ever expect of someone your age. You saved him by bringing him here. No one else would have had the courage to do what you did." Ava gave a small, tentative smile, but her eyes clouded with worry. "I didn't tell anyone about him," she admitted. "Not my mom, not anyone. I thought she might get mad, or maybe she wouldn't even care." Alina frowned slightly. "Why do you think she wouldn't care?" Ava's expression grew guarded, her eyes looking down. "My mom, she's been different lately," she said slowly, as if each word was a weight she was struggling to lift. "Since Dad left, she doesn't really go out much, and she sleeps a lot. Sometimes she doesn't even notice when I come home from school." Alina's suspicions about Ava's home life deepened. The image she'd been forming in her mind of Ava's circumstances was becoming painfully clear, and it was all too familiar. As a nurse, she'd seen families torn apart by addiction, mental illness, and neglect. But something about Ava's resilience struck her deeply. "Ava, does your mom know about Liam at all?" Alina asked, trying to keep her voice soft and unalarming. Ava shook her head, guilt clouding her expression. "No, she's always too tired. And I didn't want to bother her. I thought maybe if I just took care of Liam myself, she'd never have to know." Alina nodded, taking a moment to process everything Ava had shared. It was clear that this little girl had been carrying a weight no child should ever have to bear, a burden that had been compounded by her mother's absence. "Ava," Alina began carefully, "I know it seems like you have to do everything yourself, but you don't have to carry this alone. There are people who want to help you and Liam, and your mom too." At the mention of her mom, Ava's expression softened, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Will she be okay?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alina paused, choosing her words with care. "We're going to do everything we can to help her. Sometimes, when people go through difficult times, they need some extra support to get back on their feet. And if your mom is having a hard time, it doesn't mean she doesn't love you, okay?" Ava nodded, though her expression remained uncertain. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself, before looking up at Alina with a determination that left her in awe. "I want to make sure Liam is safe. I don't care what happens to me. But please, don't let him end up alone again." Alina reached out, pulling Ava into a gentle embrace. "I promise, Ava, I won't let that happen. You've both been through enough. We're here for you now." Ava clung to her tightly, as if that small moment of comfort was the only thing holding her together. After a few moments, she pulled away, brushing the tears from her cheeks and straightening her coat. She seemed to have gathered her resolve, her expression regaining that familiar determination. Just then, Dr. Patel stepped into the room, offering a warm smile. "Ava, I just wanted to let you know that Liam is doing well. He's responding to treatment, and his fever is going down. You did the right thing by bringing him here." Ava exhaled, relief flooding her face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking with gratitude. Elena and Dr. Patel exchanged a look, an unspoken understanding passing between them. They both knew this was just the beginning of a long journey for Ava, Liam, and her mother. But it was a start, a small glimmer of hope in an otherwise dark situation. Elena stayed with Ava for a while longer, letting her rest and offering her small comforts, a blanket, a cup of warm cocoa from the break room. As the day grew brighter outside, it cast a warm glow over Ava's face, softening the shadows under her eyes. In that quiet room, Elena felt a sense of purpose stirring within her. She was determined to see this through, to make sure that Ava and Liam found the support they needed to not just survive, but to thrive. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she wouldn't be facing them alone. New beginnings and old wounds. The afternoon sun cast warm beams through the hospital's high windows, and in the quiet of the pediatric waiting room, Ava had finally drifted off to sleep, curled into the large armchair with a blanket draped over her. Her thin frame, wrapped tightly in her oversized coat, seemed even smaller as she slumbered, exhausted from days of responsibility that no child should have to shoulder. Elena had asked Dr. Patel to keep her updated on Liam's progress, and in the meantime was reaching out to the hospital's social services to discuss the situation. Angela Bryant, one of the hospital's social workers, arrived shortly. She was a practical woman in her early 40s, her no-nonsense demeanor softened by a deep compassion for the children and families she helped every day. She had seen many cases involving children in need, but the complexity of Ava's story caught her off guard. "She's just a kid, but her sense of responsibility, it's remarkable. She practically kept her whole world together for the sake of that baby," Elena explained, her voice quiet as she motioned toward Ava. Angela nodded thoughtfully, her gaze on Ava's small figure. "What she's done is nothing short of incredible, but she can't do it alone anymore. We'll need to approach this carefully. Children who've had to grow up fast often resist help because they're afraid of losing control." Elena glanced at Ava, her heart aching for this resilient little girl who'd kept Liam safe and hidden, protecting him the only way she knew how. She'd come to trust Elena, but there was a fragility in that trust that Elena was determined not to betray. "Angela, if we're going to help her, we need to make sure she knows she's safe, that she won't be separated from the people she cares about." Angela nodded. "We'll work with her, Elena. I'll need to reach out to child services, but I'll take it step by step, keeping her comfort and needs front and center." As they spoke, Ava began to stir, her eyes fluttering open. She blinked in confusion for a moment. Then her gaze sharpened, searching for Elena. When she found her, a quiet relief washed over her face. "Hi, Ava," Angela greeted her warmly, moving forward and sitting across from her. "I'm Angela, one of the social workers here at the hospital. Elena told me a little bit about you, and I'd like to help you and Liam." Ava looked at Angela, her posture stiffening slightly. There was wariness in her gaze, a guardedness that was only natural for someone who'd learned to rely on herself. Angela, sensing her hesitation, softened her tone. "Ava, I know you've been taking care of Liam on your own for a while now, and you've done an amazing job. But you don't have to do it alone anymore. We're here to help, not to take anything away from you." Ava's eyes darted to Elena, looking for reassurance. Elena smiled gently, nodding. "That's right, Ava. You've already done so much, and now we're here to make sure both you and Liam are safe and taken care of. That means helping your mom too." Ava's expression faltered, a hint of sadness clouding her eyes. "I don't think my mom wants help," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She just wants to be left alone." Angela's gaze softened with understanding. "Sometimes People feel that way when they're going through hard things, but it doesn't mean they can't find their way back. We're going to do everything we can to help her, and you can be part of that, too. Ava seemed to absorb this, her hands twisting in her lap. I just don't want Liam to get taken away. He's so little, and he doesn't have anyone else. I just want to make sure he's safe. Angela nodded, her voice steady and reassuring. We understand, Ava. We'll make sure Liam is in a safe place and that you'll be able to see him. You're very important to him, and we'll honor that. But we also want to help you take care of yourself, too. The mention of Liam's safety seemed to settle Ava's worry, at least for now. She nodded, her shoulders relaxing slightly. Elena exchanged a relieved look with Angela, grateful that the conversation had gone as smoothly as it had. But she knew this was only the beginning. After their discussion, Angela made a few phone calls, coordinating with child services and organizing a temporary foster placement for Liam. Elena stayed by Ava's side, sensing the girl's anxiety building as the reality of the situation began to sink in. When the foster care liaison arrived, a woman named Marissa who'd been fostering children for over 20 years, Elena introduced her to Ava. Marissa had a calm, motherly demeanor, and she knelt down to Ava's level, meeting her gaze with a kind smile. Hi, Ava, Marissa said gently. I'll be looking after Liam for a little while. My home is very cozy, and I promise he'll be well taken care of. You're welcome to come visit him as often as you like. Ava looked up at Elena, her expression filled with uncertainty, as if silently asking for permission to trust this stranger. Elena nodded reassuringly, resting a comforting hand on her shoulder. It's okay, Ava. Marissa is a friend, and she'll take wonderful care of Liam. You'll be able to see him as often as you want. Ava took a deep breath, her grip on the edge of her coat relaxing. She looked back at Marissa, nodding slowly. Thank you, she whispered. Marissa smiled warmly. You're very brave, Ava. Liam's lucky to have someone who cares about him so much. Once the arrangements were settled, Marissa carefully took Liam from the pediatric unit, leaving a lingering emptiness in the room. Ava's eyes followed Liam as he was carried away, and Elena could see the sadness etched across her face. She reached out, taking Ava's hand in her own. You did everything you could, Ava, and because of you, Liam is going to get the care he needs. Ava nodded, blinking back tears. I know, she murmured, her voice shaky. It's just, I'm scared he'll forget me. Elena knelt down beside her, meeting her gaze. Ava, people don't forget those who love them. You'll always be important to Liam, and he'll remember you, and we'll make sure you have time to see him often. For the first time since she arrived, Ava let herself lean into Elena, resting her head against her shoulder. Elena held her, her heart aching for the little girl who had sacrificed so much. That evening, Elena made a difficult decision. She had already spoken with her husband, Miguel, who had been more supportive than she could have ever hoped. Miguel had a warm, gentle nature, and though their life was busy, he had immediately agreed to help however he could. Together, they decided that they would offer temporary guardianship for Ava until her mother could receive the help she needed. When Elena shared this decision with Ava, the little girl looked up at her, surprise and gratitude shining in her eyes. You really want me to stay with you?" she asked, her voice trembling with both hope and uncertainty. Elena smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from Ava's forehead. "Yes, Ava. I think it would be nice for us both. You'll have your own room, and you'll be able to visit Liam whenever you want. We can work through this together, one step at a time." Ava nodded, her face softening with a tentative smile. "Thank you, Miss Elena," she whispered, her voice filled with relief. "I won't be any trouble. I promise." Elena's heart broke a little at the words, knowing that Ava's first thought was to make herself as unnoticeable as possible. She squeezed Ava's hand, offering her a comforting smile. "Ava, you're not trouble at all. You're a gift." The following days brought a steady rhythm of new routines. Ava quickly settled into life at Alina's house, adapting to her new surroundings with the same quiet resilience that had brought her this far. She and Miguel developed an easy rapport, and Alina's two teenage daughters, Sofia and Maria, took an immediate liking to her, inviting her to join them for board games and teaching her new card tricks in the evenings. The girls shared more than just laughter and games. Maria, the older of the two, would often sit with Ava, chatting about her own challenges at school, subtly encouraging Ava to share more about her life. Slowly, Ava began to open up, confiding in them about her struggles and her fears, her quiet resilience and determination inspiring admiration from both Sofia and Maria. Meanwhile, Angela worked tirelessly behind the scenes, coordinating with social services to arrange therapy and counseling for Ava's mother, Laura. The journey was long and difficult, and the meetings with Laura often left Angela and Alina feeling a mix of hope and worry. Laura's dependency on substances, combined with a deep depression, had left her isolated and unresponsive to initial outreach efforts. One cold afternoon, Angela asked Ava if she'd like to visit her mom. The young girl hesitated, a mixture of fear and hope flickering in her eyes, but she nodded, her determination rekindled. As they entered the hospital where Laura was receiving treatment, Ava's small frame seemed to brace itself, and Alina could see the conflict written across her face. The visit was emotional and brief. Laura was weak, her gaze distant, but when Ava reached for her hand, a spark of recognition brought a glimmer of life back to her eyes. She reached out, her fingers trembling as they closed around Ava's small hand. "Mom," Ava whispered, tears shining in her eyes. "I'm here. I'm okay." Laura's lips trembled, a hint of a smile breaking through her exhaustion. Her voice was weak, barely audible, but she managed a single word: "Thank you." Alina and Angela shared a glance, understanding the weight of that simple gesture. For the first time in a long time, Laura had allowed herself to connect, if only for a moment. In the quiet days that followed, Ava began to find a rhythm and sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. She blossomed in Alina's care, her laughter coming more freely, and the burden she carried seemed to lessen with each passing day. Ava's journey was far from over, and the road ahead would be filled with challenges. But with Alina by her side, and with Angela's dedication to helping her family heal, she had finally found a place where she didn't have to face everything alone. As the snow began to melt, and the first signs of spring appeared, Alina knew one thing for certain: Ava had brought them all together, creating a newfound strength and unity that no one could have anticipated. And together, they would make sure that both Ava and Liam had the family, stability, and love they deserved, the bonds that heal. The early spring air had started to soften, but cold gusts still blew through Cedar Valley, making the transition between winter and warmer days hesitant. The snow that blanketed the town had melted, revealing budding patches of green grass and tiny wildflowers forcing their way through the thawing ground. For Ava, the change in seasons felt like a reflection of her life, a slow, cautious shift from survival to something that resembled hope. Alina's home had quickly become a sanctuary for her. She shared a cozy, light-filled room with an alcove window overlooking the small backyard, and she loved sitting there, watching the branches sway in the wind, the sky's colors shifting as the day passed. In this room, she had found a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in a long time. But even as she settled into her new life, Ava's thoughts were never far from Liam, and her visits to Marissa's foster home became the highlight of her week. The Rodriguez family, who had taken Liam in temporarily, was nothing like Ava had expected. Marissa was kind and calm, a woman with a warm, reassuring smile who immediately made Ava feel like family. Her husband, Tom, was a retired teacher with a gentle demeanor and a habit of telling endless stories that always made Ava laugh. They had a cozy, bustling household with 3 kids of their own, and they embraced Liam with open arms, treating him as if he were their own. One Saturday afternoon, Alina took Ava to the Rodriguez house for a visit with Liam. The moment Ava stepped through the door, she could hear Liam's little giggle echoing through the hallway. Her heart swelled as she walked toward the living room, her steps quickening. Liam was on the floor with Tom, who had turned an old cardboard box into a makeshift train for Liam to ride in. As soon as he saw Ava, his face lit up, and he reached out to her with a happy squeal, kicking his tiny legs in excitement. Ava knelt down beside him, her face breaking into a radiant smile as she gathered him in her arms. "Hey, buddy," she murmured, holding him close. "I missed you." Liam babbled in response, patting her face with his chubby little hands, his giggles filling the room. Ava's heart felt light, and in that moment, all her worries melted away. For her, Liam wasn't just a baby she had cared for. He was family, a piece of her heart that she couldn't imagine living without. Marissa sat beside her, watching the siblings with a gentle smile. "He's getting stronger every day, thanks to you, Ava. I think he knows how much you love him." Ava smiled shyly, brushing a hand through Liam's soft hair. "He's so much happier here," she said, a touch of sadness in her voice. "I'm just glad he's safe." Marissa rested a hand on her shoulder. "You're a big reason he's safe, Ava. You're an incredible sister. He's lucky to have you." That evening, as they drove back home, Alina noticed that Ava was quieter than usual. The joy that had lit her face at seeing Liam had faded, replaced by a pensive expression as she gazed out the window. "Are you all right, Ava?" Alina asked softly. Ava nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on the passing scenery. After a pause, she sighed. I worry about him. Even though I know he's safe now, I keep thinking about how he was before, how he was all alone. And I feel like I should have done more." Alina's heart ached. The depth of Ava's compassion and sense of responsibility was both inspiring and heartbreaking. She reached over, gently resting a hand on Ava's shoulder. "Ava, you've done more for Liam than anyone could ever expect. You saved him. You gave him love and protection when he needed it most. That's more than anyone else did for him." Ava turned to her, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "But what if he doesn't remember me when he grows up? What if he forgets?" Alina felt a lump form in her throat. She wished she could promise Ava that Liam would remember, that he would never forget the sister who'd saved him. But she knew memories faded with time, especially in children as young as Liam. Still, there was a deeper truth she could offer. "Memories may fade, but love doesn't," Alina said, her voice filled with conviction. "The bond you share with Liam is stronger than anything. Even if he doesn't remember the details, he'll always feel your love. You'll be a part of him, no matter where life takes you both." Ava listened, her expression softening. She leaned back against the seat, her gaze thoughtful as she absorbed Alina's words. A small, hopeful smile tugged at her lips. "Thank you, Miss Alina. I think you're right." A few days later, Alina received a call from Angela, the social worker, who wanted to update her on Laura's progress. It had been a month since Laura began her treatment, and though it was a long, difficult journey, Angela was cautiously optimistic. "Alina, I think Laura's turning a corner," Angela said over the phone. "She's starting to respond to the therapy, and for the first time, she's been asking about Ava." Alina felt a surge of relief. She had worried about Laura, knowing that her recovery was crucial not only for herself, but for Ava too. "That's wonderful news, Angela. Ava's been asking about her mom as well, but she's afraid to hope too much." "I understand. Laura has a long road ahead, but we're taking it one step at a time. We're arranging a supervised visit next week, and I wanted to see if Ava would be open to it." Alina glanced across the room, where Ava was drawing quietly at the kitchen table. Her heart swelled with a mixture of pride and protectiveness as she watched her. She knew Ava had been carrying so much on her shoulders, but maybe this visit could offer her a sense of peace, a reassurance that her mother was trying. "I think she would want that," Alina replied, her voice warm. "I'll talk to her about it." The day of the visit arrived quickly, and Elena drove Ava to the rehabilitation center where Laura was receiving treatment. Ava's hands fidgeted in her lap, her fingers twisting anxiously as they neared the center. Elena reached over, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "It's okay to feel nervous," Elena said softly. "This is a big step, and it's okay to take things slowly." Ava nodded, taking a deep breath as they pulled up to the center. Angela greeted them at the entrance, offering Ava a warm smile. "Are you ready, Ava?" she asked gently. Ava swallowed, nodding with a quiet resolve. "Yes, I'm ready." They walked down a quiet hallway to a small visitation room where Laura was waiting. She looked thinner, and her face bore the marks of her struggle, but her eyes held a brightness that hadn't been there before. When she saw Ava, her face softened, and she held out her hand. "Ava," Laura murmured, her voice trembling. "I've missed you, sweetheart." Ava hesitated for a moment, her gaze searching her mother's face for something familiar, something solid. Then, as if reassured by the gentle warmth in her mother's eyes, she moved forward and took Laura's hand. "Hi, Mom," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. They sat together, holding hands, as Laura spoke haltingly, opening up to her daughter in a way she hadn't done in years. She talked about the pain she had been running from, the sadness that had clouded her mind, and how hard she was trying to find her way back. "I know I wasn't there for you, Ava, and I'm so sorry for that," Laura said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "But I'm trying now. I want to be better for you. You deserve so much more." Ava squeezed her mother's hand, her own eyes brimming with tears. "I just want you to be okay, and Mom, I don't need anything else." They stayed like that for a while, the silence between them filled with a sense of healing that words couldn't express. Angela and Elena watched from the doorway, giving them the privacy they needed, both moved by the quiet strength of the bond that was beginning to mend. In the weeks that followed, Ava began visiting Laura more frequently, and each visit brought new steps toward healing. Laura was working tirelessly in her therapy sessions, her progress slow but steady. She had started writing letters to Ava and even made small gifts for her, gestures that meant the world to her daughter. Ava's world had changed dramatically, but she was no longer carrying it alone. She had the support of Elena, Miguel, and her daughters, as well as Liam's foster family. And now she had her mother slowly coming back to her. One evening, as they were sitting around the dinner table, Miguel brought up an idea he and Elena had been discussing. "Ava," he said, his voice warm and kind, "we've been thinking that you're part of our family now, and we'd love for you to stay with us for as long as you want. You'll always have a home here." Ava's eyes widened, her expression a mixture of shock and joy. She looked to Elena, who nodded, her smile filled with love. "You've brought so much to our family, Ava. We're here for you, no matter what," Elena said, her voice gentle. "If you want to stay with us, we would be honored to have you." Ava's face broke into a radiant smile, her eyes brimming with tears. She nodded, a wave of relief washing over her as she whispered, "Thank you. I'd like that." As spring blossomed in full, Ava's life had transformed into something she hadn't thought possible. She was surrounded by people who loved her, who supported her, and who had become her family in every way that mattered. She continued to visit Liam, now seeing him as a part of an extended family that held a special place in her heart. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, Ava felt a sense of peace. She had a family, a mother who was working toward recovery, and a baby brother she could visit and hold close. And in this new life, she'd found something precious: hope. As she sat by the window that evening, watching the last light fade from the sky, Ava knew that the bond she had formed would carry her forward, a foundation of love and resilience that would guide her into whatever future lay ahead. The circle of family. The warmth of spring had settled over Cedar Valley, breathing life into the town as flowers bloomed and the days grew longer. In Elena's household, Ava had become more than just a temporary guest. She had found her place as part of the family. She shared chores with Sofia and Maria, joined them in late-night talks, and even began calling Elena and Miguel Tia and Tio, a gesture that warmed their hearts. But even as life seemed to find its balance, a visit from Angela wrought a new shift. Angela had come by one sunny afternoon with an important update. Laura had been making significant strides in her recovery, her therapy going well, and she had recently completed an intensive program designed to help her stabilize and develop tools for long-term mental health. Now, the court was considering reunification. Elena watched as Angela spoke with Ava, carefully explaining the options. Ava's face was a mixture of emotions, her hands twisting in her lap as she processed the news. If you want to return to live with your mother, we'll work with you both to make it a smooth transition, Angela explained, her voice warm and understanding. But if you feel comfortable here with Elena and Miguel, there's no rush. It's all about what feels best for you, Ava. Ava bit her lip, glancing at Elena, who smiled back with gentle reassurance. She looked down for a moment, collecting her thoughts, then looked back at Angela. I want to see her, but I think I'd like to stay here for now, Ava said, her voice steady but thoughtful. I want to make sure she's really okay. Angela nodded, respecting the maturity behind Ava's decision. That's perfectly okay, Ava. You don't have to decide everything right away. We'll arrange some more visits, and you can take your time. Over the following weeks, Ava visited Laura regularly. Each visit was a chance for both mother and daughter to reconnect, and Laura continued to rebuild her life with determination. She had joined a support group, started working part-time at a local library, and had even taken up gardening to bring more peace into her life. Their visits were filled with laughter and shared stories, and Laura's love and pride for her daughter were evident. She often marveled at Ava's strength, expressing her gratitude for everything Ava had done to keep their family together. One sunny Saturday, as Laura and Ava sat together in the garden outside the center, Laura turned to her with a look of earnest sincerity. Ava, I'm so proud of you, Laura said, her voice catching with emotion. I know I put you through so much, and you took care of things that were far too heavy for you. But I'm so thankful that you had people like Elena and Miguel to take care of you when I couldn't. Ava looked up, her eyes filled with warmth and understanding. I think I was just waiting for you to come back, Mom. And I'm really proud of you, too. They hugged, a tender moment that marked a new beginning for them both. Laura had come a long way, and Ava's heart felt lighter with each visit, reassured by her mother's steady progress. At the same time, Ava's connection to Elena's family continued to deepen. Sofia and Maria had started calling her little sister, and the bond they shared was something Ava had never experienced before. They teased her lovingly, involved her in every activity, and perhaps most importantly, gave her the freedom to laugh and relax without the weight of adult responsibilities. One evening, they invited her to a girls' night in their room, and Ava felt a warm thrill of belonging. They painted each other's nails, braided hair, and told ghost stories under a pile of blankets. Ava, who had always been reserved, found herself laughing freely, her guard slipping as she let herself enjoy each moment. So, Ava, Sofia began, a sly smile on her face. Any crushes at school? Ava blushed, her face turning red as she shook her head vehemently. No way. Maria laughed, giving her a playful nudge. You don't have to lie to us. We're your sisters. We won't tell. Ava giggled, feeling a mix of embarrassment and delight. She had never had anyone tease her like this, and it was thrilling to be part of these sisterly moments, knowing she was safe and cherished. Later that night, after they had all settled into their sleeping bags on the floor, Sofia reached over and squeezed Ava's hand. We're glad you're here, Ava, she whispered. You belong with us. Ava's heart swelled with joy, and she squeezed Sofia's hand back. She felt like she was part of a family again, in a way that filled her with warmth and peace. Meanwhile, her bond with Liam remained as strong as ever. She visited him often, spending hours at the Rodriguez home, playing with him and caring for him with the same tenderness she'd always shown. Liam, now more robust and full of energy, would squeal with excitement whenever he saw Ava reaching for her with chubby arms. Marissa and Tom, too, had come to think of Ava as part of their extended family. They knew that Ava's love for Liam was unbreakable, and they welcomed her visits with open arms. One afternoon, Marissa sat with Ava on the back porch, watching Liam play in the yard. She turned to Ava with a gentle smile. "Ava, you know you'll always be a big part of Liam's life. No matter what happens, you two are connected in a way that's very special." Ava smiled, her heart full. "Thank you, Marissa. I think he's my family in the same way I feel like you are." Marissa's eyes glistened as she reached over, pulling Ava into a warm hug. "We're honored to have you in our lives, sweetheart." As summer approached, the idea of family began to take on a new meaning for Ava. She realized that family wasn't just about who you were born to, but about the people who stayed, who cared, who became part of your life because they chose to love you. She had a mother working hard to build a new life, an adoptive family that had taken her in with open hearts, and an extended family with Marissa and Tom, who loved Liam and welcomed her as one of their own. But the question of where she truly belonged still lingered. Angela continued to check in with her, and each time, Ava had the option to consider reunification. She wrestled with the idea, torn between the love she felt for her mother and the deep bond she developed with Alina's family. One evening, as the fireflies blinked outside and the house grew quiet, Ava sat with Alina at the kitchen table. She hesitated for a moment, then spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Tia Alina, I don't know what to do," she admitted, her hands clasped tightly together. "I love my mom, and I know she's getting better. But I feel like I belong here too. I don't want to leave." Alina listened patiently, her gaze warm and understanding. "Ava, you don't have to choose right now. You're loved and wanted in both places. And no matter what you decide, you'll always have both families. It's okay to take your time and let your heart guide you." Ava looked down, her face softening as she thought about Alina's words. "Do you think it's possible to have two homes?" Alina reached out, taking Ava's hand in hers. "I think family is made up of all the people who love you, and you can have as many homes as you need." Ava's face broke into a smile, her heart filling with gratitude. She leaned over, wrapping her arms around Alina in a tight hug. "Thank you, Tia. I think you're right." As the summer wore on, Ava began to find peace in her unique family situation. She continued to visit Laura, who had grown stronger and was making plans to move into a small apartment nearby, ensuring she could stay close to her daughter and maintain her support network. Laura, now working at the library and volunteering with a support group, had transformed into a source of strength and love. During one visit, Laura held Ava's hands, her expression filled with hope. "Ava, I want you to know that wherever you feel happiest, that's where I want you to be. I'll always be here for you, but you have people who love you with all their hearts, and I trust that you'll know where you belong." Ava nodded, her heart brimming with love for her mother. "Thank you, Mom. I'm so proud of you." Laura's face softened, a tear slipping down her cheek as she held her daughter close. "And I'm proud of you, Ava. You saved both of us." At the end of summer, Angela organized a gathering to celebrate the community that had rallied around Ava and Liam. The Rodriguez family hosted the event in their backyard, and everyone Ava loved was there. Alina and her family, Laura, Marissa, and Tom, and even some of the neighbors who had pitched in to support them during difficult times. Laughter filled the air, and Ava felt a warmth in her heart as she watched her two worlds come together. Liam toddled around the yard, giggling as he chased after the family dog, while Sophia and Maria introduced him to other children. Laura chatted easily with Marissa and Alina, her expression light and relaxed, a marked difference from the person she had been before. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ava sat with Angela, who watched the gathering with a satisfied smile. "You've created something beautiful, Ava," Angela said softly. "This family you've built is a testament to your strength and love." Ava's heart swelled with gratitude. "I didn't know what family was supposed to feel like before, but now I think I do." Angela smiled, resting a hand on Ava's shoulder. "And remember, you're the heart of it all. You brought everyone together." As the evening continued, Ava found herself wrapped in the love and laughter of her family, her heart filled with a sense of belonging she had once only dreamed of. She had a mother, a family with Alina and Miguel, and an extended family with Liam's foster parents. Her life was rich with love, connection, and hope. In the glow of the fireflies and the sound of laughter, Ava felt a sense of peace. Her heart had found its home, not in one place, but in the bonds she had created and the love that surrounded her on every side. A forever home. The warmth of late summer drifted into early autumn, bringing with it the rich hues of turning leaves and the crispness that hinted at winter's eventual arrival. For Ava, the changing seasons had always been a quiet, steady reminder that life was moving forward, whether she was ready for it or not. But this autumn felt different. There was a new certainty and calm in her life, a sense of being deeply rooted, no longer buffeted by the uncertainties of her past. Ava was thriving in Alina and Miguel's home. She had started 6th grade, her confidence growing with each passing day, and the quiet resilience that had once been her soul's survival tool was now joined by a sense of security and joy she hadn't known she could feel. Her nights were filled with Sophia and Maria's laughter, her days at school with new friendships, and the steady encouragement of Alina and Miguel. She had found her rhythm, a place where she felt free to be herself, and the weight she had once carried for Liam and her mother seemed lighter now, shared by all those who loved her. But even in this newfound stability, Ava hadn't lost sight of her connections to Laura and Liam. Her visits to Liam and Laura continued to be a constant, meaningful part of her life, grounding her and reminding her of the journey that had brought her to this place. One Saturday morning, as leaves spiraled down from the trees outside, Alina found Ava in the backyard, sitting cross-legged on the grass, watching the wind play through the branches. Alina approached, sitting beside her and enjoying the peaceful silence that hung in the air. After a moment, Ava turned to her, a thoughtful look in her eyes. "Tia Alina," she began, her voice steady but soft. "I've been thinking about something." Alina gave her an encouraging smile. "What's on your mind, Maija?" Ava's eyes dropped to her hands, her fingers brushing the edge of her sweatshirt. "I love my mom, and I'm really proud of her for everything she's done. And I love Liam, too. But I don't think I'd want to leave here. I feel like this is where I belong." Alina's heart swelled, but she kept her voice gentle and calm. "You've been through so much, Ava, and I want you to know that whatever you decide, we're here for you. But if you're saying you'd like to stay here with us for good, well, that's something we'd love." Ava looked up, her eyes bright with a mix of relief and hope. "Really?" Alina took her hands, squeezing them warmly. "Really? You're already family to us, Ava, and if you want to make it official, we'll be by your side every step of the way." After that conversation, a flurry of plans, paperwork, and discussions with Angela followed. Ava would officially join Alina and Miguel's family as their daughter. The journey wasn't without challenges, but the support of Angela, the Rodriguez family, and Laura made it smoother. Each person had a role in making sure Ava's transition was not only legally sound, but also filled with love and understanding. One afternoon, as Alina and Ava met with Angela to review the last few documents, Angela shared some news that made Ava's heart skip. "Laura has expressed her support for this decision wholeheartedly," Angela said, her voice filled with warmth. "She wants what's best for you, Ava, and she knows you found that with Alina and Miguel. But she wants you to know that she's always here for you, that she'll always be your mom." Ava's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of gratitude and love. She had been afraid her mother would feel rejected, but Laura's unconditional love and support had given her the strength to fully embrace this new chapter. Later that evening, Ava called her mother, her heart pounding as she dialed the number. Laura answered, her voice warm and steady. "Hi, sweetheart," she greeted, a note of calm happiness in her tone. "Hi, Mom," Ava replied, her voice catching slightly. I wanted to thank you for everything." Laura's voice softened. "Ava, you don't need to thank me. I love you, and I'll always be here for you. I'm so proud of you, and I'm grateful that you have a family who loves you so much." Ava took a shaky breath, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I love you, Mom. I'll always need you too." They talked for a while longer, sharing memories and laughter, and when Ava hung up, she felt a sense of peace settle over her heart. She didn't have to choose between her mother and her new family. She was loved by both, and that was a gift she hadn't dared to hope for. As the day of Ava's formal adoption approached, a quiet excitement filled the house. Sophia and Maria helped Ava pick out a special dress, giggling as they twirled her around, while Miguel spent hours decorating the house with streamers and balloons, determined to make it a celebration Ava would never forget. When the day finally arrived, Ava woke up with a mixture of excitement and nerves. Elena helped her get ready, her hands gentle as she brushed Ava's hair and fastened the small locket Laura had given her around her neck. It was a simple locket with a tiny picture of Laura inside, and it gave Ava comfort, reminding her of the love that would always connect them. "You look beautiful, Ava," Elena said, her voice filled with pride. "Today is your day, and I hope you know how loved you are." Ava looked up at her, a smile spreading across her face. "Thank you, Tia Elena. I'm so lucky to have you." Elena hugged her, her eyes misty with emotion. "And we're lucky to have you, Maija. You've brought so much light into our lives." At the courthouse, Ava was surrounded by everyone who had been part of her journey. Laura was there, sitting beside her with a proud, gentle smile, while Marissa and Tom held Liam, who clapped happily as if he understood the significance of the day. Sophia and Maria sat beside Miguel, their faces beaming with excitement, and Angela was there too, her expression one of quiet pride. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. He looked over the documents, nodding approvingly as he read through the notes on Ava's story, her journey, and the support that surrounded her. Finally, he looked up, his gaze warm as he addressed Ava. "Ava, today is a very special day. You are joining a family who loves and cherishes you, and I hope you know how deeply you're valued. But you're also bringing your own strength, love, and resilience to this family, and that's a beautiful gift." Ava nodded, her heart pounding as she listened to his words. She felt Elena's hand squeeze hers, and when the judge asked if she wanted to be officially adopted by Elena and Miguel, she answered with a clear, heartfelt yes. The judge smiled, his eyes kind as he finalized the paperwork. "Then it is my pleasure to declare that Ava is now officially a part of the Marquez family. Congratulations, Ava." Cheers and applause filled the room, and Ava was quickly enveloped in hugs from everyone around her. Laura hugged her tightly, whispering words of love and encouragement, while Miguel and Sophia lifted her up, twirling her around as they laughed and celebrated. When they returned home, a surprise awaited. Friends, neighbors, and loved ones had gathered to welcome Ava into the family officially, and the house was filled with laughter, music, and the warmth of everyone who had supported her along the way. Ava's heart was full as she looked around, seeing the faces of everyone who had become her family in one way or another. Marissa handed her Liam, who hugged her with his chubby little arms, his happy babbling filling her with joy. She hugged him tightly, whispering a promise to always be there for him. As the night wore on, Sophia and Maria pulled Ava into the backyard, where fairy lights twinkled and fireflies blinked in the warm evening air. They spread a blanket on the grass, sitting together and looking up at the starry sky. Sophia turned to Ava, her voice gentle. "So, little sister, How does it feel to be officially part of the family? Ava smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. It feels like I'm finally home. Maria wrapped an arm around her, leaning her head against Ava's shoulder. We're glad you're here. You make our family complete. As they sat together, a peaceful silence settled over them. Ava gazed up at the stars, feeling a deep, abiding sense of belonging. She knew she would always have a place with her mother, with Liam, and now with Alina, Miguel, and her sisters. Her life was woven together by the love and resilience that each person had brought to her journey, and she was surrounded by the family she had once only dreamed of. In the quiet of the night, Ava whispered to herself, a smile tugging at her lips, I'm home. And as the stars shone brightly above, she knew that this family, this home, would be with her always, a forever circle of love that she would carry in her heart for the rest of her life.